Greetings, Amiga Hops and Top Teners everywhere. This is Mike from Top 10 with Kyle and Mike. I am joined this week, as I am every week, by our lovely co-host Kyle. This week, in a special treat, he is not wearing his Jim Jams or any sort of Detroit Tigers paraphernalia. This week, he is wearing a crisp Oxford shirt. He's looking very professional. I'm sure he has just saved some township many thousands of dollars by making their roads more efficient. Now, to that end, Kyle is dressed as such because he is joined by a very special guest who I will let him introduce. They are here to talk about a topic with which I am wholly unfamiliar. We're going to debate this topic for approximately 1 to 6 hours. And by the end of this episode, we will have a definitive top 10 of that list. So Kyle, and Kyle's very special guest, what are we talking about this evening?
Well, thank you for that flawless introduction, Michael. You are correct. I am here with a very special guest. I am joined today by my colleague and friend, Daniel. Daniel and I have worked together for the last couple of years and realized that we have shared interests in a lot of things, movies and music and books and such. And he's also an avid listener of the podcast. He's become very familiar with us, and you'll be hearing more from him on our next Mistakes pod, which we are grateful for. But yeah, Daniel, so that is who Daniel is, and you've got a list prepared here.
I do.
What will we be discussing?
So this is something that before I started listening to your podcast, I tumbled around in my mind. I thought of like, do I write a coffee table book on this? I don't know why I'm so obsessed, but my list is the top 10 time travel movies of all time.
Oh my goodness gracious.
To me, what I love about time travel movies is it fits into like almost any genre. And, there's romance time travel movies, there's sci-fi, there's series of movies that, with established characters that all of a sudden they go down the time travel rabbit hole. So I think there's so many good examples out there of time travel movies and so many bad ones as well. So I just thought it was something that was, ripe for exploration. So I do have some caveats of kind of what, the rules that I'm using. So my list, just for kind of setting the table, doesn't include movies where you redo the day's events. So no Groundhog Day, no Run Lola Run, no Edge of Tomorrow, or Live Die Repeat, however you want to classify that.
This is interesting. So this is sort of like so there's no like time loops, like this is just you're condemned to relive the same day endlessly.
Right. None of those. No like communicating across time. So what was that movie Frequency with, Jim Caviezel and Dennis Quaid's dad, and they're communicating across time.
I'm thinking of like, did you see Arrival? Like that's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, spoiler.
Yeah. And then no seeing future, like traveling to the future, seeing future events. So like, no like kid thrust into an adult body, like in the future.
So no Big with Tom Hanks.
Yeah, which is not time travel, but there was like, I don't know, there's some Jennifer Garner one where she's, thrust into adulthood.
13 going on 30. It's a classic.
There. Is it? I can't say I've seen it, but I will take your word on it, sir. So to me, it was more like intentionally or accidentally traveling into the past and then grappling with the consequences, the challenges of knowing the past. Can you change the future? Kind of all the fun stuff around that. I did not intentionally avoid romance movies, but I have to say none made the list. So, and there are a few of note. There's one that made my honorable mentions. But so that's kind of the baseline.
Okay.
Any thoughts before I jump in?
I think those are good rules because without some trimming, this list becomes even more expansive than it already is.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that that's fair because like a lot of the movies you described, while there's like a time component, you're right, they're not grappling with the consequences quite in the same way that they are, and I think what we're going to talk about. So
I do have one question. The question I have, it's more not so much about the like type of time travel as the degree. So let's say there's a movie about Kyle and me and our friendship, and like halfway through we time travel for like 10 minutes, and it's not the whole story, but it does have some impact, and we do explore it. Like, does that sort of qualify in your eyes, or does time travel have to be the main thrust of the film?
No, I don't think it's the main thrust. I've got examples in here that it's not the main thrust, but it is kind of a chunky component, and I think it's worth debating when we get to that point.
Yeah, and maybe that's part of like what weight you give to it for its relative rating.
Yeah, maybe.
So, okay.
Should I jump in?
I think a great place to start would be number 10.
Number 10. So for number 10, I've got Looper, directed by Rian Johnson. Had Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Bruce Willis, Emily Blunt. To me, cool timeline, time jump back, messing with your past kind of component. I kind of liked how they handled time travel and you just appeared. It wasn't a big flashy thing. And to me, like, I'm in for any Rian Johnson movie. I like his previous work, Brothers Bloom, Brick. I like Last Jedi. So I'm
Kyle. Could you share your feelings? Because it's so far, it's all been a love fest, and Daniel, we've only had positivity towards your taste. But Kyle,
we in general love Rian Johnson, which is why we were really excited to watch Brick at our last movie weekend, and we just were so confused by it.
Really?
We didn't. I don't know if it was just like the group mind that or something, but we were just like, what is happening? And we didn't.
Something was off about the juju. It probably wasn't Rian Johnson's fault.
To me, it's like a noir, like a film noir detective movie.
Oh yeah,
set in high school. I don't know. I just thought it was funky.
The vibe, like the noir style, is cool. It's just that we had no idea who was who and what was happening. But that's beside the point. The point is, I think you, Mike, love Looper, and we saw it in college. I think we saw it together.
Yeah, we did.
And there's some cool like time travel-y components that I think are unique to this film, like, or maybe not unique, but that they do really well. Yeah. Like the scene where, like in the past, you don't see what's happening, but you see in the future or the present that the guy is losing his like fingers and his like.
Oh yeah, that's right.
There's like the scarring, and it's like happening in real time as he's in the office. And
I mean, I still think, if I take pot shots at it, the idea of like the best way to dispose of bodies is throw them into the past is a little ridiculous, but I don't know. That seems like a waste of technology, but it's still a fun movie.
I like how janky the time travel feels because they just like put him in like this weird like washing machine, and it's just like in a warehouse. It's dirty. Yeah. But that's a great one. It's also like shockingly dark. Like we're not expecting it to take the turns that it did, but
and I think that's the thing. Is like I can't remember if I watched an interview or some of the commentary, but there was like an intentionality that most sci-fi movies have like one thing, and so everything in the trailers was time travel. And so you go in thinking that there's that one thing, and then about 2/3 of the way in the movie, there's a whole nother thing. And I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but that catches you off guard because you're just thinking like, oh, this is a time travel movie and they're messing around with time. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, what? Where did this come from?
Yeah, it's not just a time travel movie.
Right.
No.
Cool. So number 9, kind of staying in the dark characters. I've got Donnie Darko.
Oh boy.
Which, to me, wait, is there backstory on this one too?
I've actually never seen Donnie Darko,
really?
So there might be some with Mike.
No, I quite like Donnie Darko, but it's kind of making me think that there is something maybe inherently a little dark about the concept of time travel, because these are two quite dark ones. Like the thing, it just makes me think about time travel just generally. It's such a cool like literary or film or storytelling technique to make your whatever your story's about really pop. Like that's the thing. I think when movies or books or whatever get distracted by the time travel, it takes away from their story, but where they use it to amplify the story, that's when it works. And I think it particularly works when there's some sort of desperation to be in a different time, which is, I think, a little bit of a theme of both of these first two. There's always a little bit of, wish fulfillment or some other kind of component to that. I just remember sitting down and watching Donnie Darko. I rented it, whatever. And I think I watched it by myself, and it was just, the tone is so assured and consistent through the whole movie that, I just got absorbed into it, into like the slightly weirdness of it all and the kind of the tone and the characters. And I think
Jake Gyllenhaal's performance is great in that. He's brooding and weird through the whole movie. And, it's one that at the end you don't know that it fully makes sense, but you still kind of got pulled along with it. So, I don't know. I like that one.
What's the, 10-second overview for someone who doesn't know anything about it?
There is a plane accident, like an engine detaches from a plane and crashes into his house. And then there's a series of events, and the premise becomes maybe I think if I'm saying this right, he kind of realizes he should have died in that, and because he didn't, things go a little bit off the rails in the lives of people around him. And so there's kind of this weird quantum physics-y, represented in different ways, like this idea that connected elements. I don't know. It's very, very. It's hard to get your arms around, but if you kind of get caught up in the moment and in the vibe of it, it's a cool movie.
So it's the butterfly effect crossed with Breaking Bad, is what I'm hearing.
With no Ashton Kutcher, which is a good thing.
Yeah. Kyle, for you, I think you would feel like it's tonally somewhat similar to Unbreakable, where it's like Daniel was saying, it's this really sort of strong, consistent, understated tone throughout that just really works and just pulls you into it in a really cool way. In a way that the movie could have been much different and much less effective.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think there's a sequel following his sister that, was straight to video. No interest in seeing it. And I'm guessing they tried to capture, lightning in a bottle there and a second time. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, that's up to near the top of my list all of a sudden.
Cool. So number 8, I've got Army of Darkness. Start getting into some series where all of a sudden, the Evil Dead series where they decided to throw in some time travel antics. I'm just sorry, I have to laugh at the image of Mike with a cat on his back. That's awesome.
It's called right up on his shoulder.
Usually have the doors closed, but I've got a friend today, so Army of Darkness.
Yeah, she heard. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
great.
I mean, I'm not in for full horror all the time. The Evil Dead movies didn't quite do it for me, but Bruce Campbell and kind of the zaniness he brings, and there's so many iconic lines from that movie, and just kind of silliness with the time travel and being thrusting him as basically a Kmart employee back with shotguns and chainsaws back into the medieval era. It's just dumb fun to me.
There's that because I've not seen the whole movie, but there's that famous scene, right, where he's got a shotgun and they're all he calls it his boomstick or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you seen it, Mike?
No, I actually haven't seen this one, and I have absolutely no idea what the two of you are talking about. But it sounds really wonderful.
Well, so my understanding that these are pretty over the top kind of horror slasher kind of type movies, but I didn't realize is this one film the time travel one in that series, or is it more of a consistent thread?
Evil Dead 1 and 2 is, I guess, basically a remake of one with a slightly bigger budget. Is it just a cabin in the woods? The devil, they conjure the devil and people start dying and it's super violent.
That'll happen.
And silly and over the top. Yeah. And then for whatever reason, then they made Army of Darkness and they decided to take him and time travel him and
why not?
Why not? So it's kind of silly. It's kind of fun though.
Okay. I'm pretty sure I own this movie. I haven't seen it. So.
And it's one of those that when you go into the DVD world, there's 10 different versions of it, with added scenes and different endings. And I think there's there's one ending where he travels back to the present, and did he, one of the running jokes is that he has to say things out of the Necronomicon and repeat lines, and he always messes them up, and then there's dire consequences, to put the demon away, he's got to say it right, and he just kind of mumbles the last line, and then at the end it's the same thing, to travel back into the present. Does he mess it up, and does he bring the evil back with him? And then I think there's a version that's kind of a Rip Van Winkle ending that they didn't use, where he's just like falls asleep in a cave and, wakes up with a big gray beard and the world's decimated and it was his fault, So it's just a fun movie.
We should watch this at our next movie weekend.
To watch. Is that just a list that just keeps growing?
Yeah,
It's
I think
hard to-
Michael's the official keeper of that list, and we'll have to trim it down because it always gets pretty lengthy by the time we're ready for it. But
Gotcha.
It's growing, but in wonderful ways. The good thing is we sort of segregate topics by genre.
Oh, gotcha. So, Kyle, I have a question for you.
all right,
Do you have a time machine?
I don't.
Okay, well, then we better cut to some non-top 10 right now so that we don't have to go back in time and try to redo it.
Wow, that that was definitely very well premeditated and by far the best not top 3 cue we've ever had.
Yeah, that was a keyword who knows.
Amazing.
Who knows the
So,
bit.
I mean, it's time, right?
Yeah, it's it.
Time
This is it.
to cue the stank.
Amazing. Well done.
Well, in the immortal words of Andre 3000, stank you smelly much.
Wow. My goodness.
Did you have that one ready the first time that we ever said stank and you've been holding on to it, or was it later that you figured it out?
I think it was the stank in the bank. When you pulled out that stank in the bank, I was just like, that's brilliant. How do you even compete with
Wow.
that?
Stank you smelly much.
We should save this for our stank bank.
This is definitely going into my stank bank. But
Yeah, 100%.
on that note, so you have prepared, I assume you have prepared, this is probably could be you could probably do your own, you could probably do another top 10 of bad
Oh, easily.
time travel movies. So I'm sure it was hard for you to consolidate to
I
a
did.
not top 3.
I did keep it to 3.
Okay.
So definitely on that list is a little movie called Timeline.
Timeline.
So this was 2003. It stars the beautiful, beautiful Paul Walker and Gerard Butler. It's based on a Michael Crichton book, which is
Wait,
actually,
this sounds like the best movie of all time.
and it has a real fondness in our household because they go back to medieval times, and they yell trebuchet a lot in the movie. And I think it was for my wife and I, we were just laughing through the movie because it was just pretty dumb, and the repeated yellings of trebuchet, which if you're aware of a trebuchet.
Yeah.
Just I didn't want to.
It feels like that's the only word they know from that time, and so they just
exactly.
repeated it.
And the thing was that the book was I'm good for Michael Crichton books, and I like how he sets up a certain amount of, here is real science, and boy, this is kind of crazy. He always has that intro, like he did in Jurassic Park, where it's here's kind of the science that's out there and real and might actually blow your mind, and then here's where I'm just going to take it and play with it. And he had a really cool thing on quantum physics at the beginning of that book that I really thought was awesome. And I kind of liked the book. The movie was just atrocious. It was just running around, sword, medieval castles and swords and silliness with
Sure.
Gerard Butler and Paul Walker.
It's interesting because that formula is so strong. Those two leads are fantastic. It's based on a novel written by Michael Crichton, and it's directed by the Richard Donner who directed Superman.
Yep.
That really doesn't seem like it could fail.
But yeah,
But clearly it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it worth going back for to just enjoy, or is it not even enjoyable?
I don't remember it being
Okay.
that enjoyable.
Bummer. Okay.
So second on my not top 3, I've got Austin Powers 3, Goldmember.
How dare you?
Whoa, how dare you?
Sorry, you've stumbled upon some serious Austin Powers fans. Among movies that get quoted in our group, Austin Powers is up there, especially because this is the time travel one is.
Well, 2 and 3 have time travel.
Yeah, that's right. Good point.
but I'm down for 2.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. 3 got a little long in the tooth and kind of recycled some jokes too much. And
How dare you? That was all very fresh.
I mean,
I just think that we just like, you're right. It's recycled, but like we just love the stuff that Mike Myers does so much that it doesn't bother us. And we love specifically the character of Goldmember. Yoo-hoo! Can I paint this Yoo-hoo Gold?
It does have Beyonce in it, which
Yes.
That's fine. But it's also got a lot of Michael Caine, which is, but I don't think that we're so into it that we can't step back a few feet and understand where you're coming from on this one. But
fair enough. Sorry to offend.
I will say though, I do, in addition to my defense of this film as a film, I actually think it does do something that I like about time travel, which is make fun of the fundamental ridiculousn's of time travel in film, because most film time travel is just downright dumb. And especially time travel in film done in the golden age of cinema. So I do appreciate that, because that's a public service.
It's a good point. It's valid. So then I'm going to go dig deep with my last of my non-top three. And it's a movie called Millennium. It came out in 1989. This is probably not a movie that either of you are aware of. It had the all-star cast list of Chris Christopherson and Cheryl Ladd.
Okay.
Whoa.
and yeah, you looking it up?
That's a legit cast. Those are some stars.
Now this, for me, this was me as like a teenager hoping I was going to find the next big like Star Wars or something that, and I was going to be the first one to find this movie. And I remember I drug like 4 friends out to see this in the theater thinking like, guys, this is going to be this awesome,
trust me on this one,
movie, the sci-fi movie. It's going to be awesome. And we just came out of there like, the fuck was that? And I just felt embarrassed that I like made my friends like go see this movie. So it's like I'm continuing shame. Like I've held on to that shame for, holy cow, 30 years.
Hopefully this is a weight off your back. You've officially declared it your least favorite time travel movie of all time.
Yeah.
So
it's a vulnerable thing to recommend a film to friends, especially when you've like pre-planted your flag that this is going to be a good one.
Yeah.
So I applaud you for your bravery at the time, and I applaud you for your strength in cutting your losses 30 years later.
Well, I thank you for this
Yeah.
opportunity to have a cathartic moment and, just shed that weight.
yeah, you've exercised these demons in front of dozens of people. So
Yes, literally dozens. I actually just want to tag one on to this that I'm certain will not appear on your top list. It's a film I have not seen, but which I don't need to see. It's called The Lake House, and I remember the plot. You're nodding like you might know what this film is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it, but
Yeah, it doesn't. I haven't either, and it doesn't matter. But I think what happens is Sandra Bullock moves into a house, and she's getting letters from Keanu Reeves, and this is pre-Keanu Sans Keanu. She's getting letters from Keanu Reeves, who used to live there or something, and they fall in love across time. I think that's the basic plot. And if I got that wrong, who cares? But that's basically it.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those that I looked at as, not that it's a movie I love, but just fell into that communicating across time kind of
Yeah.
pile.
Yeah. Ugh.
the only one I would throw on is I hope neither of you have seen it, is a Hot Tub Time Machine.
I love how much you hated that movie. I haven't seen it, but you're the only person who I've heard like give a actual negative review. I've heard people say it sucked, but I loved it.
No,
I thought it was pretty dumb but fun.
it was
Right, that's the review everybody gives except Kyle.
Yeah.
Come
on, John Cusack.
Yeah, he was fine, and Chevy Chase as the hot tub technician was funny, but it was one of those movies where like 35 minutes in, I was like, oh, this is it, huh? Like,
yeah.
And then from there it was just,
Did it make you angry that they made a sequel?
I didn't see it.
But just by sheer presence, did it make you angry? If you were dead, if it was dead to you 35 minutes in, that they extended it a whole nother movie, you're just like, you've crossed a line.
I don't think it caused me distress. I was just doing my just making sure to keep my distance from it, which I managed to do. I have not seen the second one.
There you go.
So.
There you go. You're in good
I
shape.
think I might watch this later tonight because this cast is just so stellar and so weird. It's got John Cusack, Rob Corddry, Craig Robinson, Clark from The Office,
That's right.
Crispin Glover, aka the guy who runs the orphanage in Like Mike, Lizzie Kaplan, Chevy Chase, and Sebastian Stan.
Oh,
Wow, I do not remember him being in that.
me neither.
This is pre-Winter
Yeah.
Soldier, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness. I'm probably going to watch this later. Thanks for the suggestion, Kyle.
Yeah, have fun. All right.
On with the list.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Let's hit number 7.
So, number 7. I have a little movie called Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Just a small film.
small film. Which, again, going back to my early years, I think this was one of the first dates I went on.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a memory.
And a safe movie, It's got something for everybody.
Yeah. No, that's a crowd pleaser for a first date. Was it first date?
Nah, I'm not sure. I think it was, and I think, if I'm truly honest with myself, we actually didn't end up dating. I just thought we were, but we were just just going to see movies as friends. I mean, let's see. I was 14. What do you know?
14, yeah.
No, this was good because this would have been a bummer of a movie to make out through. I only made out during one movie, and it was Chronicles of Narnia 2 Prince Caspian. And so I was having the opposite problem to you. You thought that this young lady was interested in dating. I missed the signals I was getting because this young lady asked me to go see a movie, and she proposed we see Vegas Vacation with Ashton Kutcher and Cameron Diaz, aka a classic crap movie that you make out at. And I was like, hell no, let's go see Prince Caspian. And we saw Prince Caspian.
Well, at least you got to see Prince Caspian.
Yeah.
Silver lining.
Yeah, true.
So I have to say, with Bill and Ted's, I'm actually excited for the next movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that was happening, and again, I have not seen... I've seen bits and pieces of this movie. I've never sat down and watched the whole thing. And it felt like they do a lot nowadays. Like a movie that's having a sequel a little too far gone. And but it sounds like the people that loved this in the first place are all of the right age to appreciate another one, assuming it's done correctly. So that's good to hear.
And now it's my turn to say Keanu-sans. So,
we're
in the midst of the Keanu-sans.
Yes.
So.
They're definitely hitching themselves to that train and seeing how far it will take them.
I mean, why not?
Well, I think the good thing about this is that I think that most of the people who really liked this movie are really okay with this movie being extremely silly and self-referential, and I think really the only sin that this film could commit is to take itself too seriously.
Oh,
and I think as long as it doesn't do that, I don't know, what's a disappointing version of Bill and Ted 3? What's going to piss you off? I just don't think you can unless you do something really stupid and just try to be, take it too seriously. I don't know. I don't think that this is The Godfather 4.
No. And it's dumb enough that when you talk about coming back and doing fan service, that's all you're kind of expecting is just a bunch of fan service,
right?
And in between, I gotta say, 2 holds up as well, the second in the Bill and Ted series, because there's a great character of death, and they have the whole cliche of having matching of wits against death to come back to life and escape death, essentially. And they challenge him to board games, and they keep winning. and death is kind of it's kind of taken from, I can't think of what, a very classic black and white movie. There's a reference in there that I'm missing, but he's got kind of this Eastern European accent, and each time they beat him, he ups. So it's, they beat him, and he's like, best of 3. And so then they play something else, and they beat him, and he's like, best of 5. And then they beat him again, and they're like, best of 7, and he's like, damn right. And so it's just this dumb joke, and then Death becomes one of their friends, and like it's kind of hanging around with them, and there's just a lot of stupidness with historical figures and other things through the movies. So it's silly. To me, it's a classic. I'm a little bit older than the two of you, so it hit it in the right spot for me.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I need to catch up on that then in time for the new one.
All in. I gotta watch the second one. I've seen the first one, but I gotta watch the second one. This is a great pick.
So moving on to number 6, getting into some like established series here. I'm going X-Men Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
I have to confess, I was a little sleepy when we watched this one, and I'm still deeply confused about what happened. I watched this one in Kyle's senior dorm room. I want to say it might have been like after a football game or something. And we were like, do you remember what it was?
I think I was on duty. And so like,
yeah,
it was definitely a weekend where partying was happening. Cause I remember that we had to pause it like 1,000 times to tell people next door to like stop being so loud or else I was going to have to take their beer. And
yeah,
but
on duty, can you? Sorry to make you sidestep, but what were you on duty for?
I was an RA senior year, so
I was an RA as well.
Oh yeah, okay, so a couple narcs,
yeah, exactly. We'll have to trade battle scars at some point.
But I remember being really mad because I was enjoying this movie. I was like, these idiots keep stopping me from enjoying this X-Men film that I'm really liking because it's one of my favorites. Like I mean, First Class might be my all-time favorite in that series, but this is right up there. Great cast, and like the time travel components are fantastic, especially because it's like this giant red reset button.
Right, exactly. I mean, it gave them the ability to do that. Not that they've done much good with that,
right?
But
yes,
but and I think a peak in the series to me was X-Men 2, and I thought that was excellent, and then 3 fell off, the board, and then Brian Vaughn, resuscitated it with First Class. So yeah, this just kind of blending the cast. It was kind of like that one chance to, pull everybody together in one shot. And I thought they did a lot of really cool ideas, and played with some of the ideas, pretty well.
Agree. I think like the appeal of just seeing like Fassbender and Ian McKellen like in the same movie is like hard to beat.
Yeah.
It's a really good use of time travel and like in a meta sense for making a movie.
Yeah.
And also I think it's cool that they like the era they picked it in, because I think it's set in like like during Vietnam, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which like, I don't know, it's just like a weird time to choose, but they did a lot with it that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
Having Peter Dinklage in your movie is always a good idea.
Yeah, exactly.
I like this one a lot.
Yeah, it's got some third act problems, but
it's like all these kinds of movies.
It's a superhero movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the cool thing about this is it proves that shamelessness need not ruin your movie, because like I think that this is something a lot of movies don't get, is they either go the highbrow or the shameless route. And I think that this film pretty shamelessly decided that this was a good way to kind of bridge the gap, like you guys said, and to give us this really fan servicey thing where we get all these cool actors from different generations on the screen together. But it didn't feel cheap, and it didn't feel like they decided not to write a story just because of that. It's not like they just had this one great idea for them, both like within and without the script, and then just said, fuck it, we don't need to write the movie. Instead, they had this good idea, and then they made it work.
Yeah, and they had the cast from both sets of movies to pull it off.
Yeah.
And if you want to go down the geek rabbit hole, there is a different cut of the movie, because they apparently filmed all the stuff with Rogue, with Anna Paquin as Rogue in the movie.
Oh.
And then just completely cut her out of the movie.
Ouch.
And it's actually kind of interesting. I've watched it. Like, basically how like Kitty Pryde was the one who was time traveling Wolverine's consciousness into the past. She gets injured, and I can't even remember. She might even die. And Rogue has to step in, or Rogue dies. Somebody dies anyway, and Rogue has to step in and like absorb her powers and keep it going. And that's about it. But it was still kind of interesting.
That's like, I love that, like, especially now with the Snyder cut, like these these never before seen like alternate versions of these movies that we know so well.
When you realize, it makes you realize how much they do after the fact, right? To rejigger the movie and make it a different story or fine tune the story.
Or remove someone's mustache with CGI. You know, there's a lot of stuff that goes on.
Or remove a person entirely because they're racist and horrible. It happens.
Yeah.
So, we ready for number 5?
I am if you are.
Okay. I think from what I've heard, I think this is going to be a popular edition. Number 5, staying in some of the series movies. We're going to Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Booyah.
Yeah. So I had that. That was one of the first ones I thought of. So I just want to note that this would be a higher time travel pick if this had been a standalone book and we didn't then have to really stupidly deal with the fallout of this later where we're like, ooh, and the time turners were broken. Like, that was unfortunate that she introduced this without really any plan to de-introduce it. But this was so perfectly done, and it was perfectly done both in the book and the movie. And I actually think that the movie may even have dealt with this better than the book, or at least as well as, in a way that I was really surprised and compelled by.
Well, it was in very good hands with the director.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Yeah. So you had that going for it. But with the time turners, don't they show up in the Broadway London play? I mean, isn't that a big component of that?
It's like the hinge point of that entire play is
a
to steal one from our friends at Binge Mode. Not canon.
Not canon. Yeah.
But
that was unfortunate.
For me, like, I am so down with Alan Rickman and Gary Oldman in anything, and to have, like, they're probably my 2 favorite actors, and to have them in one movie together was just like,
oh, they go toe to toe.
Oh, I know, they totally do.
Yep, they're electric.
They're amazing, and probably my favorite part about this is that, I mean, I read Prisoner of Azkaban when I was like in elementary school, and saw the movie shortly thereafter, and like entirely understood it. Like, it's very like well thought out and like well explained version of time travel. I guess it's easier when it's just like 1 turn equals 1 hour,
right?
Or what does he say? Like 3 turns should do it. So it's like a little bit more contained.
Yeah.
But and also it's just fun because like when you go back and you remember all the stuff that Hermione's been doing, it makes sense that she's had this time turn with her the whole year.
Right.
And like,
yes, it fits into place in a way that's really surprising. Like, most movies can't pull off both the surprise and the clean fit, but this one surprises you because I don't think it's that easy to pick up on. But then when you do pick up on it, it's like, oh, that actually works, which is pretty shocking. I also think part of the reason that it works so well is because the consequences are not particularly magical. Like, they talk about what's the problem with time travel. One is that you would think you're going insane, which has nothing to do with magic. And 2 is just like, logistically speaking, you could end up not doing the thing you're trying to do. Like, I think that those are really cool consequences to have, where it's not like your soul will be trapped in the past. Like, I love Inception, but the limbo thing is just, it's hard to wrap your brain around. Whereas, like, you see yourself and you're like, why the hell am I over there? I'm right here. I go crazy and kill myself. Like, that's like pretty easy to understand. And the consequence of, you do this thing, but you don't save Buckbeak, also easy to understand. So I think, like, to your point, Kyle, the stakes are set up clearly enough that when you get walked through what happened, it's pretty easy to follow.
Well, and I think one thing we haven't really touched on, which, you know, with time travel movies, is they kind of have to make a decision, or time travel stories, you know, can you change the past? Can you make changes that are going to have an impact, or is it all predetermined? And, you know, how does that kind of play out? And so to me, I think this does a good job of, when Harry's standing there and realizing that it was him all along, just this,
so great.
Exactly. And so it's that predetermination of this was always meant to happen. And I've seen, I think it was handled pretty lightly and creatively and, thoughtfully, that, you bought into it. It had the impact. It wasn't just like, Like, because to me, a story of predestination could be really dull. Because it's like, oh, this was meant to happen. You can't do any, as much as you want to change something, you can't. And this, it was a positive thing. It was a hopeful thing.
Well, I think it's cool because I think I would just alter your point only so slightly, which is I think it's that whatever happened is going to happen, but you can still affect it in your time in the past. Like Harry still has to cast the Patronus charm,
right?
But when he sees it in the future, it already happened. So it's like the thing is going to happen, but you still have to make it happen. And I think it's really cool because when Harry sees the Patronus be cast, he's already been saved, but it still comes down to him to be the one to save himself. And obviously that's a little bit loopy and confusing. And if you haven't read it, you have no idea what we're talking about. But it's cool because to me, it kind of flirts with both the you can and you can't change the past things, because I think a lot of these movies, you like you said, you end up seeing the same thing again, or you see something different. This is cool because it totally hangs together. You don't actually have to change anything but the people you're following with the camera, which is really kind of cool.
Awesome.
Love this pick.
Good.
Yeah.
So getting down to number 4, I have, strangely, another Bruce Willis movie, 12 Monkeys. Either of you?
I was this close to watching that the other night, and I'm pissed now because it's on Prime right now.
Oh, is it?
And literally this close. And then the next one over was Harold and Maude, and my dad had just told me on the Denzel podcast to watch that movie. So I was like, well, I better watch that. So I have not seen it, but
Mike, you've seen it? No?
Yeah. Yes, I have seen 12 Monkeys.
So Terry Gilliam's the director.
Yeah.
Kind of have, a hit or miss with him. I never got into Brazil. I had a couple friends who got really big into his early movies like Brazil, and Fisher King with Robin Williams is actually pretty good. Time Bandits scared the crap out of me when I was a little kid. But this kind of just hits a really good mark in my mind. It's some gritty sci-fi. There's kind of that predestination component to a certain extent, but then he plays really well with the idea of, Bruce Willis gets sent back in time to change the past, but he's not sure if he's going crazy because he gets locked up in a mental institution with Brad Pitt, who is crazy good in this movie, just just launching into a wild performance. And, and it's just toys with that idea of how much of this is in Bruce Willis's head. Yeah. And how much of it, is really actually happening. So it's a good movie. I like it. It's rewatchable. They've decided to make it into a TV show, so apparently there's enough to chew on there. I think FX has it going into a couple seasons of, I don't know if it's FX or Sci-Fi or somebody's made it into a TV series. So
I think you totally captured the big thing about this movie. So this is just a great movie, on a lot of levels. It's just really well done. Like you said, Brad Pitt and Bruce Willis are both fantastic. It's got a really cool sort of, I really like how the film is shot. It's a really good movie, but the point is, I think each of these entries on our list do something different about time travel, which is cool. And I think your point that this one really captures how confusing this actual experience would be and how disoriented you would be and whether or not you believe it, that it's happening or you think you're going crazy. I think that's really cool. And I think that's the lasting addition of this film to the category, is that I think it, as well as any film has, captures that disorientation.
I know this breaks your rule entirely, but are you a Lostie? Did you watch Lost?
Oh, yeah.
So what you're describing reminds me of what's the episode called? Where Desmond it's the greatest episode ever, The Constant, where he's on the boat and he's on the island, but he's flashing back periodically to a couple years prior, and he's trying to find Penny.
Oh,
and
that's right.
So but he keeps going back and forth, and his nose keeps bleeding and stuff because he can't ground himself. And the whole point of the episode is that he needs to find something that's constant so that his mind can recalibrate in time, and that's Penny. But anyways, it sounds like that's kind of the same concept, like how like it would really screw with your mind to be jumping around in time and not having like something to ground yourself with.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've seen 12 Monkeys, so I don't remember every beat for beat, but yeah, I just remember he gets sent back. There's a terrorist organization that's going to unleash a virus, and he's supposed to stop the virus because he's from a future where it's kind of decimated everything. He keeps getting pulled back into the future for like mission briefings essentially, and like they're asking him if he's had any success, and then he's back in the mental ward, and and the kind of sci-fi tech is very kind of grimy. It's not one of those shiny, bright, clean sci-fi movies. So there's a weird vibe to it. It's different.
Cool. Sounds like another movie I'm thinking of that I feel like is probably higher on your list, but we'll see. But now, obviously, as an avid listener, I think it probably makes sense to rattle through your honorable mentions, and then we'll just follow up with anything after you finish your actual list.
Makes sense. Yeah. Absolutely. So I have to say, I'm okay for a Trek movie. I'm not, I'm more Wars than Trek. Trek does a lot of time travel. And, I think when I was a kid and Star Trek 4 came out, it kind of hit me at the right time. So, it's a kind of silly movie. And like now in the current day and age, I mean, like, we got to save the whales because it's going to save the future. Is something that feels very 80s to me right now. But the idea of like Spock wandering around in 1980s San Francisco was fun and stupid, and kind of it makes the list for me as an honorable mention. I'm almost embarrassed to say this. I had Hot Tub Time Machine on my honorable mentions as I look.
It's totally.
I'm gonna put it on mine after I watch it.
I'm the only. It seems like I'm the only person that doesn't like it, so it's totally valid. You're right. I'm wrong. I think on this one.
As far as dumb comedies about time travel go, it's the dumbest, probably. so
except for Hot Tub Time Machine 2, probably.
Yeah, probably. I had Midnight in Paris. I'm not I'm not a big Woody Allen fan, but
wow.
But that one, like, I was okay with it. I remember enjoying it. I've only watched it once, but
I'm not okay with this. I love this movie.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, Mike's two pillars of interest are literature and film, and so like a movie all about appreciating literature is right up his alley. And I'll let you talk about it since it's one of your favorite movies, but.
Yeah, and Caroline and I just stumbled upon this one. This was we were looking for a movie to watch. I think this was 2010 or 11. It was somewhere around there. I was either late in high school or I had just gone to college or whatever, and it was like a summer night, and Caroline and I were like, yeah, well, that sounds interesting. I wasn't into Woody Allen movies at the time. I think it was my first one, and we just went with no expectations, and both were just dazzled. It was one of those ones I recognize that my experience of watching it is coloring my review of it, which happens. So I definitely have a rosier view of this movie than it probably deserves. But man, I love this movie.
Yeah, I don't generally go in for Woody Allen movies. I don't see what all the hype is about. But this got enough attention that we checked it out, and I just remember feeling just kind of charmed by it.
Yes, charmed is the right word. And I think the movie did a cool job of just sort of ignoring time travel consequences, which I liked. I think I was pretty fine with that choice for this movie.
It's not what it's about.
I wasn't going to give a shit whether like he didn't eat the right number of escargot from his plate and his wife noticed and it turned into a thing. Like I didn't.
Yeah. So also on my honorable mention list, I've got a movie called Somewhere in Time. That is,
I don't know this one.
This is Christopher Reeves. I think maybe pre-Superman.
Whoa.
Ooh.
And it's a romance movie. And the reason this is on my list is this was my mom's go-to tearjerker movie. Like it was just something in our household that like if my mom needed a good cry, she would watch this movie. And the premise is he's an actor in Chicago, like a stage actor. And a very, very old Gene Seymour comes to one of his shows and says, come back to me, and gives him some hint. And he goes up to the Grand Hotel in Mackinac Island.
Oh my goodness.
And somehow figures out that he time traveled back in time. He sees a picture of her younger, and I think he finds a picture of himself or something, and then it figures out, and there's no science fiction. It's like he just wills himself into the past essentially, and then there's time travels back to her, and then there's a romance, and then there's a big tearjerker ending, and it's actually got a soundtrack that it's like a piano number that, again, my mom loved, and it's the kind of thing that if you're in an airport and there's like one of those player pianos, it may be playing. Like it's a decent enough piano soundtrack that it gets played and shows up in random places. But it makes my list just because it was so indelibly linked to certain things in my childhood.
All right, next time I need a good cry. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And
that's awesome.
I did put also on honorable mentions. I put Avengers Endgame. Fantastic movie. The time travel is probably the weakest part of it, and I just couldn't justify it being on the list of great time travel movies. It's a great superhero movie, so I don't know what, I just couldn't click those two together enough to.
Can you? So I had that as a possible for the list, and I'm trying to remember now what were some of the time travel issues. And we've already spoiled this one before, so don't worry about spoiling this one.
In terms of just like continuity?
Yeah, what was your, because I don't remember having issues with the time travel, but I'm a little vague on what they might have been.
I think that there's just, and maybe some of this will get resolved with some of the TV shows they're going to start pumping out, but but this idea that Captain America went back and put everything in place. There's actually if you guys ever check out How It Should Have Ended, I know I've talked to Kyle about this.
Yeah.
Like YouTube videos, animated videos. They did one just on like what happens to Cap when he goes and puts back everything. And, it starts out easy with, he goes to New York and he finds the Ancient One, and it's like, here you go. There
you go.
Here's the time stone. It's like, oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be easy. and then when it gets to like how he takes the red
and gives it back
injects it back into Natalie Portman. Like there's just like, did they create alternate timelines? Did they not? Is there, is there fracturing of the timeline? Did they keep everything in check and controlled? I think that's where I had problems. You got to buy all in that, like, okay, every time you make a change, you're fracturing the timeline. There's parallel timelines or there's consequences of some kind, or it was all predetermined and it all fits back like a puzzle piece at the end of the day.
It's a pretty big hand wave to say, like, Cap just did it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've actually, another podcast I listened to, one of the hosts had interviewed the Russo brothers and had basically asked, like, is at the end of the day, is this a big hand wave? And they're like, yeah,
dude, it's a 3-hour movie.
Yeah. We got so much ground to cover and to accomplish. We're just gonna ask you to kind of buy in that this makes sense and all works.
Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
I get that.
I also threw Deadpool 2 on the list of honorable mentions. It's a fun, stupid movie, and time travel is kind of minor to it, but it's
same thing where they're just like, they don't take it too seriously, so it's fine.
Right.
Like, yeah.
And then they have a lot of fun with it over the end credits.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
yeah. When he goes
that
back
was
and
I
shoots
forgot
Ryan
about
Reynolds
that.
in the head when he picks up the Green Lanterns. That's awesome.
That was so good.
So that's what I had. What else do you guys, or you guys wait till the end?
Let's
after
wait,
you see
because, I want to see what your top 3 are.
At the end. Okay. So now we're into the top 3.
The top 3.
The heavy hitters, the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go number 3. I'm going to go Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
Of course. I knew it was going to be up here.
Yeah.
And this one, I feel like really lucky in how I ended up seeing this movie, because
love how I saw it stories. Let her rip.
So I was in high school and went away for a couple weeks on an exchange trip to France. And I came back and I'm all excited to see my friends and go out and it's like, and it had just opened. We're like, yeah, let's go see Terminator 2. And I had seen none of the advertisements. And so like the whole, like, he's back this time for good, I think was the tagline. Like the whole idea that he was a good guy this time I didn't know any of that. And so the moment in the hallway
Wow.
where young Eddie Furlong's running away from Arnold and towards the Robert Patrick.
Yeah.
And just like how they play up the first, like they go so beat for beat with the first movie, and they cast this like kind of the skinny guy that doesn't seem intimidating, and there's just subtle clues that make you think he is the good guy, and Arnold, of course, it's just going to be a sequel, and he's the villain again, and I just recently showed this movie to my daughter, and it was funny because I was waiting for that aha moment. And it took her like an extra beat. So she still was like, why is he still running away from the cop? And I'm like, didn't you see where he got shot and turned into liquid metal and tried to, shoot him? Like, but anyway, she caught on and had fun with it. But there's so many things in that movie that are so well done. And time travel is a small part of it in a way. Like,
it's definitely a bigger focus in the first movie because they have to introduce it.
Right.
And then in this movie, it's like, okay, there's time travel.
Yeah.
And then they kind of, But it is, they're from the future.
And they changed the future.
Yeah.
So it's a solid action movie, and just one of the best out there.
More than solid. Yeah. It's like, it's simultaneously like one of the greatest action movies ever and also one of the best time travel movies together. Like they stuck the landing with two different kinds of movies, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is just a deeply magnificent movie. I don't want to let it pass your reference to Eddie Furlong because his two roles in this and American History X are just like one of the great, like two random movies that one person has been like a really outsized part of. He sticks in my memory because he was so ridiculously a big part of both of those movies and is not good in either one, but like really matters but can't drag either movie down.
Yeah. I can't think of him in Terminator 2 without like that voice crack that kind of happens when he gets emotional, and it's
he's so bad. He's such a bad actor.
I've heard he is in Dark Fate in some capacity, like, so it'll be curious to see.
I have lost track of this series. And I think, to get back on board because the trailer for the new one looks awesome.
Well, and the premise is that like this is Cameron back in control of the franchise, and so they are kind of doing. I'm trying to think what other series have done this recently.
Like Halloween, where they just pretended like 7 movies didn't happen.
Yep, they're just pretending.
Yeah, that's like give me more Linda Hamilton.
Yep, so they're pretending that the only other movies in the series are 1 and 2.
Oh, that's amazing!
Yeah, that's awesome.
So 3. Genesis, Revelations, whatever. I don't know. All those are just...
So does that mean Christian Bale didn't yell at the camera guy?
Yeah.
Like, how does that timeline
They time traveled and they changed the past so that Christian Bale was never John Connor.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah. Cool.
That's awesome. I remember a while back there was a rumor that Neil Blomkamp was going to do Aliens 3. And they were just going to pretend like Aliens 3 and 4 never happened.
He, from whatever I heard, he had a script, had Sigourney Weaver on board, and then it
was going to be like a Sigourney Weaver and Newt from Aliens.
Yeah.
And it just never panned out, which is too bad. So maybe Terminator can nail this. I hope so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's my number 3. So then number 2, this is one I think I tipped you off, Kyle, and I think you might have tipped Mike off.
I don't know if you ever got a chance to watch it, Mike.
So this is a little indie movie called Primer.
Oh, you did tell me this. I didn't watch it. Oh, shit. I forgot about that. But this is good. Teach me.
So Primer is kind of starts with basically some Steve Jobs types, fumbling around in their garage, working on some kind of tech, trying to come up with, a bunch of different startups. They're all wearing shirts and ties and working in a garage.
It's clear that they've come from their actual jobs directly to this guy's garage.
Yeah. And you don't know for the first 15, 20 minutes what, they're doing. And they clearly have some different ideas going on, and they're trying to solve different challenges. And you don't quite get a sense of what's going on until it kicks into full gear, and where they have figured a way to unlock time travel. And it's one of those indie movies where there's not a lot of special effects. I can't even really think of any.
Like, literally zero. And also, like, when they're filming stuff outside, you can, like, hear cars going by and stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
it is it's one of those low-budget movies where it's like, oh, they paid for this with their credit card, and they managed to pull off a really well-crafted, knowledgeable movie, that you're just like, damn, like, you did it. And what they do with time travel is they, better than any movie I've ever seen, have established the rules and live by the rules. But you still are you have that good level of confusion at the end where you want to rewatch it to kind of figure out, like, wait, what happened? And you can go online and you can find crazy detailed, like, timeline, infographics of helping you to understand. But you can watch it one time and take enjoyment from it. And they come up with the rules, and you can't poke any holes in it.
It's airtight.
That is incredibly high praise.
Yeah. It's airtight.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because, like, it's clever how they do it, the way they write it, because they help you along a little bit in the sense that, like, they're figuring out all the ramifications and
right.
the timelines at the same time you are. So they're like, the guy's like, we need to go to a hotel room. And the guy's like, why? He's like, because we're going to be here in this same time. So, like, we can't interact. So we just have to sit in a hotel room all
right.
day. And you're like, okay. But it's like, that's like step one. And you're like, okay, I'm caught up. Mm-hmm. And then the next step is like, but then this, and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. That's a little more complicated, but it all lines up. And by the time it ends, you're like,
well, and I'll say, I don't want to give away too much, Mike, if you end up watching it, but one of the ways
I'd love to.
One of the ways they make it airtight is that, as opposed to a time machine that you can just pick any date in history and go to it, there's basically an anchor. Like, they can't travel back any further than where they kind of set up their machine. And so, they set up the machine on day 1, they start it running, and on day 5, they can travel back to day 1. They can't go back any further than that. And so it just makes it so it's airtight, and you would think, well, there's not a lot you can do with that.
Wrong.
Yeah, so it's a funky, cool indie movie that makes you realize you can do sci-fi on a low budget, and you don't have to have special effects, and it can blow your mind. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I'd recommend this one. I, like, a couple days after you told me to, Elise was out of town, and I was like, hell yeah. Rented it or whatever and just, like, enjoyed it. And then I ended up watching, like, I didn't watch it again immediately thereafter, but I watched, like, pieces of it, and, like, then, like, I couldn't just go to bed. I had to, like, think about it.
Did you start drawing out logographs?
Yeah. It's like, he just comes back and there's just, like, Sharpie all over the walls.
Yeah, you went all beautiful mind on it.
Yarn.
And the disappointing thing is that, so the guy who wrote it and directed it is one of the two main leads. And I don't think he's done anything since. And it's just, like, showed so much promise. And it's like, where's this guy now? I'd love to see him pull out another movie, but maybe
that's so weird, because the skills that you're describing are exactly the skills that would make it's like a Rian Johnson. Like that's why Rian Johnson's so successful, is he proved that he was capable of making these great movies that mirror what high budget films do with no budget.
Right.
That's kind of the golden. That's the formula.
Well, and I think there's really cool creativity. Like, one of my favorite quotes is actually from Robert Rodriguez, who has done a mix. I won't go, I'm not all in for every one of his movies, but one of the things I've always appreciated is, like, he challenges himself to do it on a low budget. And I've read a quote from him where it's like, yeah, you can solve any issue by turning the money hose on it, but you come up with more creative and better solutions without, and so I think that there's something to be said about challenging yourself with the tools you have and not just throwing more money at it. And so I think that's what's interesting.
Yeah, well, and as a result, they're forced to be creative with their writing and their plot structuring, which they certainly are in this one.
Yep. So worth checking out. So that takes me to number 1. And
I imagine I know what number one is, but okay.
I think it's a little hard to get around, where we've gone since we haven't mentioned it yet. But yeah, so number one is Back to the Future.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just an all around fun, so many quotable lines, so many iconic elements to that movie. And also, as I've aged, it kind of messes with your mind after a while, because my daughter is 30 years younger than me, and the spans in those movies are 30-year increments. So it's 1955, 1985, 2015, if you start looking at the sequels. And so I got to show this movie to my daughter at the same point in her life when I saw it. And then I started thinking about the fact that to her, 1985 is the same as 1955 was to me, and where, yeah, exactly. Whereas I'm just thinking like, that's like ancient history. And I'm like, and to her now that means like, 1985 is ancient history. And I'm like, no, it's not. It can't be.
It's not that long ago.
It's not that long ago. But yeah, there was something special about watching it with her and having that, that span and seeing it through her eyes and remembering like what a roller coaster thrill ride that was the first time I saw it, as it builds up to the end and, all the pieces coming together, and, Doc Brown running around and trying to connect the chords and, Marty falling apart on stage. And, it's just, there's so many in the soundtrack, and the sound cues, and there's just so many key things in that just come together so well.
It's one of the best movies ever. Yeah. And also I think as a time travel movie, it's like intro to time travel, because it like very clearly explains and actually kind of like standardizes a lot of the tropes and stuff that get used, like him fading from a picture, or like, or like the fact that Doc...
That's interesting.
Yeah, or like that Doc can wear a vest, like you can change the future, and then like Lone Pine versus what is it, Dual Pine Mall, or
like
Twin
Pines Mall,
Twin Pines and Lone Pine, and like it just establishes like a lot of the rules that get used and recycled a lot in later movies.
And the joke of Endgame,
this is exactly.
You're basing your theory of time travel off of Back to the Future,
Wait, so Back to the Future wasn't real?
But absolutely. And this one is full into you can change the past, and and so that's compared to some of the other movies where it's just predetermined.
It's also kind of if you think about it, like it's kind of a messed up message. Like he goes back in time and like completely alters like the timeline of his family to the point where when he gets back, like his parents are unrecognizable, and like the morality of that is definitely
and that's where like as a time travel movie, it does fit into that wish fulfillment. Like could you do things differently? Could you, or change things in your life that you don't like by going into the past? It's not intentional. That's not why he goes back. But
yeah.
And also now, second notice of Crispin Glover in this podcast. But but Crispin Glover, it's just a trip in that movie, and just like both current time, before time travel, back in time, and then when he's the successful author playing tennis at the end, he's just a weird dude all around. And I like any movie that takes advantage of that.
Well, I think that's the perfect pick for number one. You're not going to get debate from me.
It's kind of hard to fight that.
And also, I would be locked out of my apartment tonight if Ellie just found out we didn't make this number one. It's probably her favorite movie. But
so what did you guys have? What am I missing?
Yeah, what do you think, Mike?
You hit everything. You hit every movie I would have wanted mentioned.
I did have a little bit of a head start on this one, so I'm going to go through some of the ones that I like. One that I'm somewhat serious about, if we feel like we want to put one romantic comedy on this list.
Oh, yeah, I know how much you like this one.
Is a movie called About Time. Did you ever see it? It's Donald Gleason and Rachel McAdams.
McAdams.
I think we had a similar experience with this one, Mike, that you had with Midnight in Paris, where we just didn't know anything about it and were so taken by it and found it to be just a delight.
I'm not even sure it was... I remember knowing that this movie existed, and I don't even think that I knew it was about time travel.
Right. It just looked like your general
Yeah, I
romantic
thought
comedy.
it was just like, oh, it's about time we get together.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that hurt it was it wasn't long after Time Traveler's Wife came out, and she was in that too.
It was almost exactly the
That was
same
definitely
time.
the confusion because
Yes.
Like,
This
oh,
is a
these are two
classic-
different movies.
Yeah, it was a classic Mr. Scan Flesh of the Stars situation.
Classic,
Yeah,
as you do.
yeah.
Let's see. Some of these are books. This one doesn't quite follow your rules. Do you ever see The Kid with Bruce Willis? It's kind of like Big, where Bruce Willis is an adult PR consultant. And he's a real dick, and he goes home one day to his big house in Malibu or whatever, and a kid version of himself is there.
Okay.
And the kid is there to kind of like make him remember like what he wanted to be when he grew up when he was a kid.
Yeah.
Make him less of a dick. It's a time travel movie only in the sense that like for some reason it's like a communicating through the past, so it doesn't quite fit. But it's actually really good.
Oh, Kyle, wait, this made me think of one. I don't know if this counts. In fact, I'm pretty sure it doesn't count, but one of the granddaddies of them all is A Christmas Carol. So, I don't think it really counts because it's not really time travel. It's more visions, but I want to just plug it anyway.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
I'll take my like bi-monthly opportunity to remind people that not all old books are bad, and this is a massive exception to that thought pattern. This is a magnificent story, and it does a lot of the time travel-y things that we're talking about exceptionally well, like extremely well.
It's very good.
Yeah, book or any of the various movie adaptations,
Including Muppets.
yes.
I should have put this one on the not top 3. Click, that Adam Sandler movie.
Is that time?
Ugh.
I've never seen it. Is that time travel?
Yeah, he uses the remote to fast forward and rewind time.
Okay.
Or to do slow motion while a girl with big boobs runs by. Ugh.
It's exactly what you'd expect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Austin Powers. This one I actually like a lot. We just talked about this on another podcast for some reason. Men in Black 3. Did you ever see it?
Yeah. No, it was kind of hovering out there. Like it could be an honorable mention.
It's not that great. The part that I love about it is how amazing. That's why we were talking about it. How amazing Josh Brolin is.
Rolling with Brolin.
Yep.
Ah.
You had all of these, and none of these count. So, yeah, that is all I had. And the only one of those that I actually care about is About Time. I think that if we're going to make room for a movie like that, that would be the one I would pick. But
And I'm fine with that. If there's something, I mean, there were a couple ones towards the higher end of the list where I don't know that either of you had seen them. So if you want to yank one of those.
I have learned to trust your judgment in all things.
Yeah.
About Time, for whatever reason, I think I've seen it and I can't remember it, which I feel bad about because it does have like Bill Nighy's in it, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
There's a lot of good people in it, and I just, for whatever reason, I feel like I've seen it and I can't remember it, and that's sad to me.
I think I might be serious about it just because the nuts and bolts of it are kind of unique in that he just finds out when he comes of a certain age that the men in his family can time travel.
Right.
And it goes really well, and it's like it plays for laughs. Like he redoes his first date with Rachel McAdams a couple times until he gets it right, you know, whatever. And then, but it really punches. I think it made me cry because the unique rule that I thought was interesting is that the chaos of like creating a child, like that whole process is so chaotic that it can't go the same way twice when you time travel. So once you have a kid, you can't time travel beyond that point.
Okay.
And so he reaches a point where he has to I don't want to spoil it, but he like has to make some tough decisions, some like emotional decisions.
Right.
When it comes time for him to start having children and stuff.
This all feels really familiar. And I gotta go rewatch
it's
this.
great. Like his dad is Bill Nighy and they play ping pong. And like, so whenever he goes, he'll just like go back in time and like shoot the shit with his dad who has passed. And so he'll just go back in time to talk with him and run things by him.
That's the thing he has to give up.
Right. And it's like right in the gut. It's very funny. It's a rom-com. I think I've convinced myself. I think it deserves a spot.
So what you want to make a suggestion?
Do you want to throw out where Army of Darkness is?
I'm fine with that. Maybe, and I think Army of Darkness might make sense because it's like Looper and Donnie Darko are like units that are like these are time travel movies.
Yeah.
Does that seem like a fair reason to drop
Yeah, and neither of you had seen Army of Darkness. I'm
Yeah.
fine with that. I mean, it's worth a good laugh and worth watching, but I can handle dropping it.
Okay.
And I think with that we should get to recapping so that Daniel's children are not wondering where he is.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I don't see any reason to reorder anything else you've done on here. So if you're ready, what we should do now is just recap the list.
Okay, so coming at number 10, Looper. Number 9, Donnie Darko. Number 8, the addition of About Time. Number 7, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Number 6, X-Men Days of Future Past. Number 5, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Number 4, 12 Monkeys. There's a lot of numbers on this list.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Number 3, Terminator 2. Number 2, Primer. And number 1, Back to the Future.
Amazing.
That was utterly spectacular. It's so nice to meet you, and it's
Thank you
so
for
great to
having me
have
on.
your wisdom, because this was the kind of list that I think Kyle and I would make if we had the talent. Like, this is like our kind of list, but you've done much better than we ever could have.
Well, thank you. I do have ideas for other episodes.
Oh,
so,
Oh,
You'll be
God,
back.
come back.
I'd
This
love
was
to.
wonderful.
But I do want to genuinely thank you for taking the time to do this. I know it's not...
Yeah.
We know it. It's not like these lists just appear, so it takes some effort. So I appreciate it, and
my pleasure. It was
and
fun.
more so, I appreciate you like learning of this podcast and jumping into it and really enjoying it. It means a lot to us that you've listened and like it. So thanks for that.
Absolutely.
On the subject of thanking, I would like to thank Kevin MacLeod for being the stankiest and putting together
The
our not top
stankiest.
3 music and our theme music.
And making a deposit in our respective stank banks.
That's
For
right.
sure.
Yeah.
Thank you smelly much, Michael.
Yes.
I'll follow that up by thanking our good friend Erin for putting together our fantastic artwork. You can see more of her stuff at Sant Design on Instagram, of course.
And I have to just jump in for a second. That is some nice artwork, because as a podcast listener, you got to get something that reads well at a very small size, catches your eye.
She's
It's got some good color. It's got some good iconography.
She's a professional.
It's good stuff.
I totally agree with your assessment. I was actually noticing just the opposite of that in a good podcast I was listening to recently, where it's actually quite an engrossing podcast. But if it hadn't been recommended to me personally, I would never have listened to it because the artwork was so bad.
All right. Anything else you want to say, Mike?
Yeah, with that, I'd like to thank our wonderful social media director, Caroline. She can be found on the old internets. I want to specifically thank her for Instagramming a beautiful picture of my co-host Kyle and his beautiful bride, Allegis. I quite enjoyed that one the other day. So if you want to enjoy her work, Google around. I'm sure you'll find her somewhere. And I know you're probably listening to this. Actually, see, I got a little cocky there. I want to mention our other social media platforms. You can check her out on Instagram. You can check our Instagram, Top 10 KM. Check us out on Facebook, Top 10 with Kyle and Mike. You can check out our poopy Twitter, or you can email us, top10km@gmail.com. All of those, the 10 is spelled out. Make sure you send us your thoughts, suggestions, ways we can improve ourselves, or tell us you want to come on and give us your own list. That's our favorite kind of thing. Probably listening to this on a podcast app, but if you want another one, we can be found on the Apple Podcast app, Stitcher, Spotify, Podbean. These closing pieces.
Spotify is a dispensary website. Don't.
Yes, it is. Or wherever podcasts can be found. Stay off of Spotify unless it's legal in your state and you are an adult who wants to do Spotify. We don't endorse Spotify.
All right. Thank you, Michael. I will catch you next week.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure. Good luck picking up your children.
Thank you. Mike.
Adios.
All right. Bye.
Bye.